Welcome everybody to a new experiment we're trying in sharing the range of careers that astronomers pursue after earning a PhD in astronomy. And so today joining us are a group of PhD astronomers who have now sort of represent an interesting range of different career choices, some remaining in academia and then a number going to just, as you'll see, a different possibilities. Joining us live are a group of research experience for undergrad, so REU students at Northwestern University in the Center for Interdisciplinary Exploration and Research in Astrophysics, so the CIERA Center at Northwestern. And yes, it's a mouthful. And so I thought we'd start by having each of our panelists introduce themselves, and I had a specific, so just introduce who you are, your current job, and just a couple sentence description of what your astronomy research was on. So let's go from left to right, so starting with Allie.
Okay, hi, I'm Allie Vandervelde. I am a data scientist at Groupon, and data scientists generally use data to answer business questions and to also build systems that optimize various business practices. So right now, data scientists are largely ex-scientists and mathematicians and economists. We work for all kinds of different companies. A couple of examples of what we do in the tech industry is we build relevance engines to decide what to show our customers. We forecast future demand to figure out what our salespeople should be doing. So I actually did 2 postdocs before this. I've been at Groupon for 2 years now. And my research was in theoretical late universe cosmology. My PhD thesis was very focused on relativistic gravity theory. And then in my postdocs, I worked a lot on weak gravitational lensing. And as a part of that, I worked on several dark energy mission concepts. And I was also on the Euclid team as a part of that. So that's it.
Evgeny, you want to go on from there?
Yeah, it's my turn. Okay. Yeah, I'm Evgeny Gaburov. I am currently in between the jobs, finishing one where I'm a high-performance computing engineer working in the Dutch supercomputing center, so CIERA, where I work with researchers to help them to get the application running fast and efficient on our supercomputer. And in the fall, I'll be joining NVIDIA in the United States, where I'll be working on C++ developments for NVIDIA. My PhD was in, I did it in Amsterdam. It was in stellar collisions and in body simulations, where again I used, at that time, so-called GRAPE hardware for gravity pipe, which accelerates computations of gravitational forces. And then in 2008, I embraced GPU computing, and that's pretty much made my career choice in a couple of years. After PhD, I went for a couple of years in Leiden for postdoc, and then I spent a year and a bit in Northwestern as a postdoc, where I worked on large-scale simulations of accretion disks with magnetic fields. And then I decided that next move for me would be outside academia, and I'd come back to Amsterdam to do what I'm doing now.
Very good. So continuing on, thank you, Evgeny. Leslie? And Leslie, if you're speaking, definitely be sure to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm Leslie Sage. I'm the astronomy editor of Nature, and I'm kind of a hybrid because I still have a research appointment at the University of Maryland, although I don't have any active projects right now. And I did 2 postdocs, and then I was a visiting assistant professor at UNLV, and then I joined Nature 22 years ago. And my research has been on star formation and gas in galaxies. My thesis was on interacting galaxies before it became hot. So.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. Melissa.
Hi, I am Melissa Nysewander. I am a data scientist at Fidelity Investments. I echo what Allie said. I think she did a great job explaining kind of what data scientist is. I feel like a lot of it is bringing the same kind of scientific rigor and deep knowledge of data and programming into the business world. At least that's where the focus of a lot of it is now. So I lead a team at Fidelity that works across the business. We work on use cases such as, marketing, making more money for Fidelity, but we also do some cool things like we do we work on fraud detection, we work on risk. I've recently started a project on human resources analytics. So some very cool stuff, again, applying kind of a deeper understanding of analytics and programming than what a company like Fidelity is normally used to. During my graduate work, I got my PhD at UNC Chapel Hill. I did observational studies. Well, I did a few things. I did a lot of observations of gamma-burst afterglows. So I did optical and near-infrared observations of that. I took those observations and used them to fit theoretical models of the progenitors of gamma-ray bursts, and that's kind of where my analytical work started. And I also put together a series of telescopes, robotic telescopes, to automatically capture the light curves in real time.
Excellent. And Meredith.
Okay, hi. I'm Meredith Hughes. I am currently an assistant professor of astronomy at Wesleyan University. For those of you who aren't familiar with Wesleyan University, it's a liberal arts college on the East Coast. It's a primarily undergraduate institution, which means that unlike faculty at a research institution, I have a higher teaching load, so I spend proportionally more of my time teaching. But Wesleyan is unusual. It's actually kind of in the middle, so I have a lower teaching load than some liberal arts colleges, and I do a lot of student advising of research. And because we're a primarily undergraduate institution, the astronomy department here does not have a PhD program, so all of my research is done with undergraduates and master's students. We have a terminal master's program, a 2-year master's program, that functions as a bridge program to take students from non-traditional backgrounds and prepare them for PhD programs. The research that I do is I study planet formation by observing disks of gas and dust around young stars using radio telescopes. And these days I mostly use the ALMA Observatory in Chile. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time. So we have this mix of astronomers in different careers, and we were deliberate in our choice in that our Northwestern REU students are part of more of an interdisciplinary REU program with a focus on high-performance computing, a focus on science communication, and a focus on the sort of data science side of astronomy. And so that's why there's a heavy representation of data scientists, software folks, as well as the science communication side. And then John Johnson will, I do expect him to join, so faculty at Harvard, sort of representing that more research one focus type institution. In general, the stats are, oh, actually, just got an email from John. He's in the midst of dealing with something, so he'll join us soon. So the stats in general for PhD astronomers is that, and this is a study that looked at 2010, 2011, 2012 graduates, that about 75% go on to at least one postdoc. But eventually, over 80% go on to careers outside of the tenure-track faculty academic route. So about 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 continue on in the tenure-track route, and over 80% go on to this range of really interesting careers. And so the first question we thought we'd throw out to the panel was a broad one about what advice do you think advisors should be giving to students about career paths? So advisors and mentors for students at the undergrad level, but maybe even more so in graduate school. What kind of advice do you think should be given these days?
I think fundamentally, the most fundamental piece of advice they can give is to keep their options open. Everybody's going to have different things that they want to do, and somebody who spent their entire career in academia, your advisor is actually not going to know a thing about getting a job outside of astronomy. But they need to be open to that possibility, and they need to know enough to be able to put you in contact with somebody who can help you, somebody like us. I've helped a lot of people actually recently. A lot of people have reached out to me and asked, how can they move into something like data science. But yeah, your advisor is not going to be an expert in this, but they do need to be open to the possibilities.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. My PhD advisor was wonderful, but he was also more senior faculty, and so he really didn't know what the current state of the job market was like, and so I definitely recommend going out and finding that information yourself. And it's out there. You can find all the statistics you want, like the ones that Laura's citing. There's more stats out there. And I would also recommend taking your quality of life into account. We have all these great interviews with people of various different careers now with a PhD, and you can look at how many hours a week do they work, what's the job market look like with each kind of job. So not just taking into account the day-to-day work life, but also the total quality of life that you would have with each possible career path.
I wanted to chime in and say, well, partly to tell you a little bit of a story about when I was doing my PhD, but the advice that's in here is if you guys do go on to do PhDs, which some of you will, some of you won't, I think that it's important to realize that PhDs are long, and with an 80% chance that you're not going to wind up being a faculty member in astronomy, you have the time, and you should take the time to explore other career possibilities. So a small amount of time consistently over 5 or 6 years can add up to some pretty significant experience. So when I was a graduate student, I knew that I was interested in teaching, and I was thinking about the possibility of a career in teaching and outreach. And so what I did is I got a volunteer position at the Museum of Science in Boston, very similar to the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, awesome science outreach institution that is always looking for volunteers, right? And I talked to my advisor about this, and I said, hey, they really need people during the week. As long as I'm making progress, is it okay if I take one afternoon a week and go and work at this museum to get experience in this career that I'm thinking about? And my advisor is awesome, so he said yes. And I held up my end of the deal. I kept making progress towards my PhD, and wrote a good PhD thesis in the end. But over 5 years, that wound up being a lot of experience. And I think the thing that came out of that was really important to me is that I learned the downsides of the career that I was considering. Because every career has downsides. Astronomy has downsides. Working in a museum has downsides. And to make an informed career choice, you need to know what those are. So I think that, and it also, the positive flip side of that is that kind of small, consistent experience over a long period of time makes you more hireable if you decide that that is the career that you want to pursue. So that's the advice that I would give is, as you're doing your PhD, think about what other career possibilities you might be interested in. I had a friend in grad school who was thinking about making a transition to climate science, which she's now successfully done from astronomy. And she also would go to networking events for climate scientists and things like that to kind of build up her network and think about ways into that career. So there are all kinds of things you can do, learning to program in a language other than IDL, gaining skills over the course of 5 years can set you up for making an informed choice and a successful career transition at the end of your PhD.
Yeah, just to echo that a little bit, if any of you end up, at the end of this or at any point interested in data science, actually in the tech world, it's pretty easy to get experience in your own building things. There's a lot of open data out there. For instance, in my city of Chicago, there's tons of data on all the Chicago public services, on crime, on census data, and there are a lot of projects you can actually do for fun in your spare time that are data science projects. And I think one of the reasons why I was able to get a job in the tech world right after being an academic was because I had done some work with census data, I'd put it on a website, and I'd shown that I had that interest there. So that kind of thing in any field looks really good to future employers.
Yeah, if I may weigh in, I would second that indeed. So make sure you have a hobby that you like, and try to get internships. I mean, maybe even unpaid internships. That gives you connections in industry outside academia. You will grow your professional network. and you'll be more hireable, mostly because if you get people to know in different companies who you can always would be able to get an interview via employee reference. You have to bypass basic standard HR recruiting. That's increases chances to get the first interview. That's what's the most important. Get side projects, explore what you like, but try to build this type of connections in the industry outside academia.
One thing that I would add is that if you choose an academic track, you pretty much give up the right to choose where you want to live. And so, you know, if you want to live in a particular place, you have to be open to what chances are available, what openings are available in place where you'd like to live. And one of the things that I think that would be very useful to learn as you're going through your PhD is project management. And I have some friends who've done that, and they've been very successful with it. And one of them, you know, she deliberately chose that pathway because she knew where she wanted to live, and that was it.
I just want to throw in as a reminder to the students, at any point, if you have questions that that are triggered as the panelists are talking, do just jump in and ask your questions. And yeah, at any time, just jump in. So there are themes that are emerging here, just about finding, as you're moving through, what gets you excited, what you're interested in, and then pursuing opportunities that allow you to test out those skills and build up those skills. One of the questions is always, what kinds of skills were you able to develop as part of your research experience that have been particularly useful in your careers now?
I'll just start out by saying programming, having a strong programming background in, as we've heard, more than IDL. So I did a lot of, because I'm a theorist, I did a lot of work in C and Fortran, and those languages are not desirable in the tech world, but the fact that I had written, you know, fairly low-level code, and lots of it was very good. But before I started interviewing for tech jobs, I was able to very easily pick up Python and SQL because I had done so much programming as a graduate student. And so I think in pretty much any area that where you're doing any kind of research, even if it's in industry or in academia, that having a really strong programming background is important. And then also statistics, knowing your statistics is extremely important in the data science and in the business world, because most people in the business world do not understand statistics, and so they need you there to tell them what they're doing wrong.
Yeah, I will echo that as well. Again, I think Ali and I have very similar experiences. Statistics and programming are vital. Knowing Python and SQL are kind of the two most ubiquitous languages among data scientists now. But I got the job at Fidelity because I had all of these technical skills. Because I could program. If I wanted to, I could program my own optimization code. I could write my own stats fitting code if I wanted to. You know, there are better ways to do it, but if I wanted to do that, I could. So that got me the job. But what got me promoted and leading a team is all of the interpersonal and communication skills that I developed. The fact that, I mean, somebody mentioned project management. Like the skills you develop in a PhD, to me, if somebody has a PhD, what that tells me is that they are able to formulate a project and execute it and be self-motivated, and, you know, actually get stuff done. but not only can they get stuff done, getting your PhD, you have to be a good communicator. You have to be able to talk about what you're doing. You have to be able to explain to a lot of different audiences how you solve your problem. And so I think that there's also a lot of soft skills that you get in a PhD that are applicable really anywhere.
And I would say that one of the things that you need to remember is that you actually are developing these skills while you're doing a PhD. And often students don't recognize that they've become good at managing a project. They've become good at programming. They've become good at communicating, time management. Unless you take 10 years to do your PhD, you typically have to be pretty focused and manage your time pretty well. So recognize that those are really good skills that employers look for.
I have maybe one of the less interesting answers to this question in the sense that I'm still in academia, so I'm using a lot of my PhD skills. But one thing that I wanted to add was that for my particular job, I found it really helpful as a graduate student to pursue additional opportunities to develop my teaching skills and my communication skills for outreach. So a couple of ways that I did that, I think more and more universities now are developing centers for teaching to train graduate students. I took a full semester course on, it was called Scientists Teaching Science, and it was on science teaching and communication by a science education researcher. And then I did various other things. I already talked about the outreach work that I did at the Museum of Science. I also did a lot of outreach work at the observatory. And you know, in addition, I went to, at the AAS meetings, they have these Center for Astronomy Education workshops where you can learn, again, teaching skills from people who are actively engaged in science education research. So, you know, if you're thinking about a more teaching-oriented career, I would say look for those opportunities in the PhD program, because it's not like the standard set of PhD skills, but often if you're at a university, a large university anyway, the opportunities are there to pick up those skills along the way.
Yeah, and let's pause just for a moment to welcome John to the group. So I think, well, we can test out your sound just by, if you want to introduce yourself, give a quick sense of what your current job is, and also what your astronomy research is on. Oh, so you need to unmute real quick.
Okay, how about now? All right, I'm going to figure this thing out. All right, so yes, I am Professor John Johnson. I'm a professor of astronomy at Harvard University, at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, and well, in the Boston area, Massachusetts. What else? What other information can I provide you?
That's good. We were just talking about what kinds of skills you developed through grad school that have been particularly useful in your current position.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Is now the right time? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so,
go for it.
Yeah, I went to UC Berkeley, and in the astronomy department there, particularly at the time that I was there was a very strong emphasis in the student population as part of the graduate student culture to invest a lot of time in teaching, and as such, there were a lot of really great teaching opportunities. And one opportunity is to be a teaching assistant for the intro astronomy course, where you get to actually run a 1-hour recitation section each week, and you had total freedom to structure that however you wanted. So I started experimenting with inverted classroom techniques, where it's peer-based and group-based learning, where I wasn't lecturing. I was actually sort of, they say you want to become the guide on the side instead of the sage on the stage. And so I developed a whole lot of innovative teaching methods that I was able to then formalize into something that still exists at Berkeley, which is called the Astronomy Learning Center. And so that's known as TALC there. And so TALC is used for all of the intro astronomy courses at UC Berkeley for the undergrad population. And then there's another opportunity, which was to design your own course, and I decided that one of the things that you don't really get to learn as an undergraduate or even a graduate student is how to do proper computer programming. It's the one thing you'll do every single day in most fields of study for astronomical research, but it's the thing that most students don't get a formal class in. And so I decided to start a class called Computer Programming for Astronomers. It was a one-semester course, and I think it's still going at Berkeley. And so, so that's where I really got a lot of teaching experience that has served me very well. Because the strange thing that happens as you climb the academic ladder is that the ultimate goal is to become a professor. And as a professor, one of your duties is teaching. But there's very little opportunities along the way to get that experience. And so by the time I started as a professor, I actually had a teaching philosophy in place. I had a whole course design in mind, and was able to hit the ground running. So that's probably one of the more important career development things that I had was the teaching experience I got at Berkeley.
Excellent. Well, let's go back to our students. So do you have questions about things they may have said, or just really questions in general about career routes and grad school and choices and anything on your end?
So I'm Erin, and you can't see me. I'm over here. Oh, there I am. So my question is for those who have left academia. What is one thing you miss the most, and one thing you don't miss?
Okay, I can start. I know this off the top of my head. The thing I miss the most is sitting up on top of a mountaintop in Chile at night, building telescopes and observing. I miss observing, I have to say. The thing I don't miss is staring at the AAS job registry, seeing only positions, only postdocs open in random places I don't want to live, or adjunct positions. I love the fact that I can now get a good, fulfilling job in any city that I want to go to.
Yeah, I would second that. I think not having any more apprehension what my next job would be, that certainly helps. I mean, after all, it's 21st century. In my eyes, the best job security is to have a transferable skills. You never know what comes tomorrow, what's economic downturn. And the problems are, if you're in academia, and especially not by choice, but by circumstances, you just slowly going through, we go from one appointment to another, then realize you're not hireable anymore. That's very disappointing when for another reason you lose a job. On the other hand, if you always have a hobby on the side, or you hedge your skills by developing and cultivating new skills, you pretty much guarantee or increase your other chances that you'll be hireable in one or another position somewhere elsewhere. And I think it's certainly worth putting that. And so what I miss from academia, of course, is challenging and stimulating environment, interesting colloquia. We always learn interesting things about development in physics and astronomy in particular. And great people to talk to, smart people to talk to. Not always you get people with challenging minds to interact with in the corporate world, who are interested in things outside, like when you talk about black holes or quantum physics, it's harder than it seems outside academia, at least for me. And but yeah, job security outside academia is certainly one thing that helps to move forward and explore new opportunities.
I guess I'll go next. I definitely miss the nature of the research. I miss studying the natural world, studying space, studying things like that. Right now, all the research I do is going into selling a product, and I don't know, that it feels a little weird. Can you can all still hear me, right? Okay, I just realized I might have been on mute, but I guess I'm not. So going from like studying the natural world around us and seeing all this beautiful stuff and looking at galaxies all day, to going to looking at Groupon deals and trying to get people to buy more things, just like the underlying nature of that kind of, it's not as philosophically, it doesn't feel as warm and fuzzy inside to me sometimes. But one thing I definitely do not miss is how slow astronomy research can go. I was working on dark energy missions. I was working on the Euclid mission. And, it's still not going to launch until 2020, I think. And everything takes decades, it gets pushed back, you're always begging for funding. I don't miss that. Like, the work environment I have now is very fast-paced, and the problems I'm working on are constantly changing, and that keeps me much more engaged.
Can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So still somewhat related, if you so when you make that move out of academia, I'm sure there were. Can you hear me? No. Okay.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, it didn't come out very clear.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Han, and I have a question. So pretty much when you move out of research and academia, I'm sure there were a lot of things that you have to learn, like, for instance, finance or marketing or things like that. Like, how did you guys do all the learning? And I mean, did you take additional schools, or did you kind of learn it as you go? Like, how?
I did a lot of learning as I went. I took some. There are lots of massive online classes now that are really great, like Coursera, Udacity. Like, I took a couple finance courses in the beginning on that. I know. So, and this might be the case in 5 to 10 years. This might not be the case in 5 to 10 years. But right now, data science is a fantastic field where you're not necessarily. You can go into the field, and you don't have to be an expert in the subject matter. You have to be an expert in the advanced analytics. And the subject matter, businesses know that that's the easy part to learn. They're hiring you because you know the hard parts. So, like, I know in my first 3 months of Fidelity, I didn't really have a lot of work to do. All I did was sit and I learned Python, I took some Code Academy classes, I took some Coursera classes, and they just gave me a lot of free rein to just kind of get, accustomed to the new environment.
Same thing here. Some Coursera, a lot of learning on the job.
One thing I can add to this is there are, for data science in particular, there are now 2 relatively new programs specific for helping PhDs transfer and transfer to data science careers and find connections to companies. And so they're the Data Incubator Program and the Insight Data Science Fellows Program. And I don't know if any of our panelists went through that. But as part of the Women in Astronomy Career Profile series, there are a couple there who went through that program. Jessica Kirkpatrick is one, and just has very positive things to say about that experience. I think hers was, I don't, somebody will correct me on how many weeks long it was, and then just the sequence of how it works. But each has a great website. So again, the Insight Data Science Fellows Program and the Data Incubator.
I'll add that I just learned about the existence of one for undergraduates too. It's different from the PhD one because you have to pay for it, but compared to it's a small fraction of the salary you would be earning in your first year. So that's slightly different. One of my astronomy students is applying to that program now. I don't know the name. I can look it up and try to post it later.
And from my side, as outside data science, just to weigh in my opinion a little bit, experience rather, quite a few things I did learn as I moved along. Some on the job, some outside job, mostly in the hobbies. You get to know how to do it right by collaborating with people on the internet, like open source project, for example, in case of software engineering. Other aspects, one thing I do regret I never did as a PhD is did internships in software engineering companies, something like that. You're going to learn a lot of experience how to do things right and what not to do things wrong, and again, getting exposure to the field and to the corporate world in a sense. So that certainly will help as well. But yeah, always try to develop some interest on the side and try to get it to the level so that you know how it's done, not just from the amateur point of view, but try to improve the quality of the work you do on a site and as a hobby, and to the level of professional. And if that's what you like, then you will be actually quite prepared for whatever you want to do next.
So other questions from our student group?
Yeah, I got a question. Yeah. All right. I'm Tim, and my question is like, you all have this career path that you all had, and when you all look back, what are some things that you would tell students not to do or things to do as far as choosing the best decision and knowing how to like navigate through the academic world or the industry or just your lives in general?
Don't go to graduate school by default because you don't know what else to do. That's my one piece of advice.
I agree. PhD, after all, it's a license considered to do. It tells that you can do research, you can do critical thinking, you can do analysis, you can learn later. And absolutely do PhD. There's at least unless you know exactly what you want to do instead of PhD. But then, as I say, hedge your bets. Make sure you know what to do and what you want to do next. And if you don't know, just spread your chances. As a best decision, you never know what the best decision is until you've made it, but there will be a lot of wrong decisions. So make sure that you do more better decisions than good decisions than bad decisions. That's pretty much going to lead you to the right path, I would say. I think that would be all for now.
I think one of the things I really wish I knew, and something that I definitely teach in all of my courses, and it goes into a lot of the advising and mentoring I do for graduate students and postdocs, is that you are not supposed to arrive in graduate school knowing things. You're there to learn things. And that might sound like the silliest thing to say because you're going to school, right? But I think in academia there's this attitude that pervades classroom spaces and the student hallways, is that you are supposed to know certain things. And if you reveal that you don't know those things, then that's somehow evidence that you're not very good or you're not very smart. And then that can cause, but the problem is that if you suppress your desire to ask questions and you don't ask questions, then that actually prevents you from doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing, and then that puts you further into the hole. And then this leads to this downward spiral that I think a lot of people enter into, and that's why people tend to struggle in graduate school. So I would say the biggest, if I would offer one piece of advice, is that you should approach, whether you're going to graduate school or you're not going to graduate school and you're going out into the job market or whatever you do in life, is to remember that you can become smarter. It's your job to become smarter. You are an highly intellectually capable group of people, and the way you're going to find satisfaction in life, no matter what, whether it's a job out in industry or if it's on the academic career path, is that you will not find satisfaction unless you are continually growing and you're at multi-dimensional excellence. And that goes from everywhere from your creativity to your just general knowledge base to your problem-solving skills to your communication skills to your pedagogical skills. All of those things increase in time. And so the only question is, are you going to put yourself on a path to have the largest exponential growth rate and therefore reach the point where you know enough to do interesting and exciting research no matter what the setting is? So try to avoid the state of mind where you think that you are in graduate school or in whatever place you are because you're awesome and that you're there as recognition of that awesomeness. And conversely, don't think that because you don't have some information that that's some kind of indication about your quality as an individual. I think the way I would judge the quality of a student is based on how willing they are to ask hard questions, to ask the quote dumb questions, and to keep asking until they understand what they need to understand. To me, that's the high quality student. The student that I don't want necessarily in my group is the one that's going to go 3 weeks without asking a question because they're afraid to ask, because they think that asking is going to show that they are not capable. That's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help research, and it's not going to help your boss. So keep this growth-oriented mindset. I wish I had that my first year.
A related piece to that is also grad school and life in general isn't a sprint. It's a long, wonderful, enjoyable, it's your life. And so the mental health aspect of it, like we don't talk about it enough, but just making sure you're taking care of yourself, you have the energy, you're remembering why this is fun and why you wanted to do it in the first place. But just, yeah, the taking care of yourself and your mental health is an important piece of no matter what you're doing in your life, what career you pursue.
Yeah, and just to build off of that a little bit, I was just going to add that I think remember to be a whole person too. I think it's very easy, you know, as you're leaving college to be so career focused. And especially when you're in graduate school, there's always this pressure to work longer, to work more hours. You see everybody around you and it looks like they're working all the time. The truth is they're not. And the other truth is that you don't get those years back. And so, I mean, think about how you're going to deal with work-life balance. The two things that I decided to do in grad school that have worked out well for me so far are, one, to work on a regular schedule. I find that if I confine my working hours to, you know, 8:30 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever it is, and those are my working hours, and if I didn't get something done at the day, it's not going to get done. That to me is a big motivator, and it helps me work efficiently during that time. Otherwise, you know, you see a lot of people who, like, they're in the office for many, many hours, but, you know, they're not really working all the time. So for me, it worked really well to set a schedule and stick to it, and when I'm done at the end of the day, I'm done at the end of the day. And the other thing is to, at every stage, try to strike a work-life balance that works for me and stick to it with the attitude that if I can't get to the next level with a work-life balance that works for me, I probably don't want to be there.
Well, I'm going to say that the biggest mistake I made in grad school, my PhD supervisor wanted me done at a certain time. And he wanted me done at a certain time because he wanted the results out ahead of other people. And so I finished it was less than 4.5 years, which was pretty fast these days. And it was pretty fast even back when I did it. And it was too fast. And I lost some of the fun from grad school, because grad school can be a lot of fun.
Going back to our students, other questions that may be in the group? Yeah.
My name is Jason, and my question is, what was one of the biggest challenges that you all faced throughout your academic careers, and how did that challenge prepare you, or did it prepare you for where you're at now?
Just thinking. I think I'm having a hard time finding any singular defining challenge because I don't think I'd be doing this job if I weren't constantly challenged in it. It's what keeps me engaged personally. I think that's a lot to do with my personality, is that if I were doing a task and I got really good at it and I had it all dialed in, then I think I'd probably quit that job pretty soon after that. But what I really enjoy, I think there are lots of pluses and lots of minuses for the job that I have, even though it looks like I might have one of the dream jobs in academia. But definitely one of the biggest pluses is that I get to set my course, and I set my course to ensure that I'm constantly challenged. And that's what's forcing me to continually get better at what I'm doing. And so I can look back at time and I can see, wow, look how far I've come, even during the time that I've been a professor. That's really impressive to me. That's actually what motivates me to go forward, because I know if I've come that far, I have that much further to go again in the next, say, 5-year segment. And I'm really hoping that I don't reach the end of that series of challenges. I hope that I'm able to continually find things that are very difficult to do, and that I can continually develop new skills to solve the next challenging thing.
Yeah, I have something pretty similar to I think what John said before too. So I think one of my biggest challenges is, well, I have a massive amount of imposter syndrome. So very kind of insecure. I always assume that the people I work with, people around me, are far more advanced than I am, and I am just constantly struggling to catch up. And it's been a challenge, especially it's been a challenge moving. So I did. So in between astronomy and data science, I actually moved after my first postdoc into environmental science as well. So I kind of restarted everything I did, and I had to learn a whole new, not a whole new skill set, but a whole new field. And then when I moved into Fidelity, like it was a whole new field. And instead of, I think one of the ways that I grew from that challenge is, instead of constantly just feeling like, you know, I'm just less than, and I don't know what I'm doing, I've come to embrace this beginner mindset where I get psyched about learning new things, where I've gotten a lot better at, you know, asking those questions and really understanding, because I can come in, like, I know that I am not an expert in many things, and I have no problem admitting that in meetings. I sat in on a meeting yesterday where they asked me, you know, my opinion on something, and I was like, you know, my opinion doesn't matter a lot here. I know absolutely nothing about vendor security. I know how to do natural language processing of your documents. You know, like it's easy for me to admit that now. But it also is neat because I do constantly get to challenge myself and learn new things.
Yeah, that resonates with as well one of my challenges. Like one thing I've always been challenging myself or questioning myself through PhD, my postdocs, is it skill or is it luck? Kind of had the papers because we stand on the shoulders of giants, we collaborate with great people, we have great advisors, they give us great ideas, they give us great guidance. Even with as a postdoc, independent, collaborate with people, you share ideas, and the question always kind of, can I do it on my own? That is, that if I would become a faculty, what if I don't have what it takes? So it's kind of set and stirred my career in where I had more confidence, what I know I'm good at, that skill, have more data points at that skill, not luck. So in this case, it's, and sometimes the question, was it the right choice? Well, in the current state, yes, but if I would pick the other one, it may well work out. So the challenge is figure out what do you think you're good at, and because that will, you would like to do what you're good at and also what you like, and that's, for me, it's still difficult sometimes.
So one of my challenges is that I'm one of those people that went to grad school just because I didn't know what else to do. I had a really rough time in college personally, and I had a lot of family problems. I was emancipated from my parents. I wanted to become a musician, but I was scared of the career possibilities, so I decided to major in what I was really good at, which was some sort of math or science. And then after I got a bachelor's degree in physics, I had no idea what I was going to do with it, so I just went to graduate school. And so my first couple of years of graduate school, I really wrestled with, like, do I want to do this? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And I stuck it out mostly out of fear of the alternatives. Like, I didn't know what the alternatives were. And I actually did get my PhD. And I actually had 2 great postdocs. I enjoyed being a postdoc a lot. And I think I'm one of the kinds of people who, although I wasn't passionate about astronomy, I think I'd be very interested working in any kind of problem-solving based field. But I think that's one of the keys to why I was able to walk away from astronomy and work in data science and not even look back. Like, I'm just as happy with the research that I'm doing now as I was before. You know, it's a different environment to work in a lot of ways, but I'm no less happy with the types of problems that I'm solving now as I was before. So that's a challenge that I've had, is trying to make sure that I reevaluate what I really want to be doing and why. That's something I did not do enough when I was going through school.
I think one of the challenges that I encountered in grad school, and it took me a while to figure out, you know, my last year of grad school was really rough, and it was hard for me, as I was thinking about it right now, to figure out why. But I think the reason why was that in grad school, especially as you reach the end, it can be really difficult to evaluate your own work and to figure out, am I doing a good job? Am I going to be competitive at the next level? that was really hard for me because as an undergraduate, you have grades, you have GRE scores going into grad school, you have a lot of kind of external markers of success. And the farther up the academic ladder you get, and the more kind of vague and non-numerical the markers of success get. And there were two ways that I got past that. One is just kind of deciding that I didn't care really what other people thought. I was just going to do things that were interesting to me and that I felt were worthwhile. And the other thing that really helped me through that was developing mentoring relationships with people other than my thesis advisor, people whose opinions I trusted that I could go to and say, hey, can you read over this thesis proposal? Or, really, you've served on, prize postdoc committees before. What do you think my chances of success are, just kind of looking at me as an applicant? I sort of had a crisis of confidence in myself, which I think a lot of people do during graduate school. And those were the ways that I helped myself get past it and continue on in the field.
I think my biggest challenge came after grad school when I joined Nature, because I knew my own field of astronomy very well, but all of a sudden I had to judge every other field in astronomy. I had to know every other field at almost that level. And so for the first 5 years, I spent almost every day reading annual review articles to try and catch up and make sure that I was where the field was.
Let's go back out to our students. Yeah, I saw there are other questions there. Yes, please.
So at what point did you decide on your current career choice? And what factors went into that? How did you guys decide?
Well, I'll take that one first because it's a question I get all the time when I give talks. And so I had a temporary job, and Wife 1.0 said no more temporary jobs. And so the one at Nature came up, and I've been reading Nature since I was a high school student, and I thought this is something that I could really get into. And so I put in my application along with 200 other people, and at Nature they put you through a series of tests, and they give you the ugliest, messiest files, and then ask, what would you do and why? And these are files that have been through like 5 rounds of review, adjudication. There is no right answer. All they want to do is see how you think about it. And then and that test arrived after I had just gotten off, well, it had actually been sitting in my mailbox in Las Vegas for a week while I was on an observing run in Spain. So I get off the 10-hour flight, and then I find out that I have about 18 hours to do this test and get it shipped off to meet the deadline. And I was sure that I bombed it. And then I got invited to Washington for an interview, and along with 7 other people. And then 2 of us went to London. And at each point there were these tests, and then they started putting time limits on it. You have 45 minutes to figure out what to do. And then in the end, I won the lottery, and 10 days later, I got offered a tenure-track job. And I decided to stay with Nature, and I've never regretted it. It's been a really fun job.
Yeah, Leslie beat me to the answer, and indeed that's exactly pretty much my career changing moment was when I was a postdoc at Northwestern, and my current wife was living in Amsterdam. She was coming to me 3, 4, 5 times a year, and I kind of was so busy with projects in between projects and deadlines and papers and next job appointment. We never had time to spend together. At some point, is enough, and it's time to move on. It was kind of clear indicator. And again, I applied for, I think, 3 positions at that time. I think it was my current one at NVIDIA and something else I don't remember. And so I joined what I have now. And again, I don't regret it really.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who changed careers because of location stuff, and that was a big part of my decision too. I came to Chicago for a postdoc, for the KICP fellowship at the University of Chicago, and after 3 years here, I just didn't want to leave. So I was applying for faculty jobs. It was my second postdoc. I was applying for faculty and permanent positions, and I saw a lot of my friends go on to their third postdoc, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. Like the whole job application process just got to me so much, and I was very, very lucky that data science was like the new hot thing, and I actually have a lot of friends who left and went to data science and were very happy, and there's just so many more jobs in Chicago, so that's why I gave it a chance, because my quality of life and being able to live where I want were just very important to me.
Yeah, so I'll say I probably fell out of love with astronomy at some point during my fourth year of my PhD, fifth year. I did rapid time follow-up observations of gamma ray bursts. I was on call 24/7, and that burnt me out pretty hardcore. But I knew that I was so close to finishing that I finished, and I did the first postdoc. But then I also, like Allie, I had fallen in love with the area down in North Carolina, the Raleigh-Durham area. And so I went off for my postdoc at Space Telescope Institute up in Baltimore. It was just never that. In some ways it was a great environment. In other ways, I saw people there that were on their fourth postdoc that were constantly moving around and didn't really have any ties to anybody outside of the community. And I knew that I didn't want to do that, and I knew that I'd already started making a lot of roots down in North Carolina. And so I was talking with a friend of mine about this, and that's when I got the job in environmental science, because my friend was a researcher and they had an opening in her group, and we realized just how similar our work actually was. So it was, I'm not going to say that was a very easy decision. It was something I struggled with for years, even after the fact, but ultimately I'm very happy where I am now.
I wanted to add one thing to the the discussion about postdocs and how terrible they are. So it's actually a really awful career stage, and it's not long enough ago that I've forgotten that at all. I think that for obvious reasons, that's a stage where a lot of people leave astronomy, and there were a couple of things that I wanted to say about it. One is that it really does suck. You don't have job security, you're moving around the country. For me, I hated it because it was just me and my computer the whole time. I was at a place where I didn't have a lot of I didn't have anybody working on the same thing that I was working at, and that really wasn't a healthy environment for me. I'm more interactive, and also I love teaching, and I didn't have the variety of teaching and research to keep me engaged. So it kind of sucked. The thing is, if you can get past that stage, which I was both lucky and I made a decision. So I made a deal with myself, and I didn't have to test this, but at the end of grad school I made a deal with myself that I would only do one postdoc, and if I didn't have a faculty job after that point, I was leaving. Right? Easy for me to say because it worked out for me, but so I don't know if I would actually have done that when I got to the end of my first postdoc, but I think you have a choice, right, not to get stuck in that endless postdoc cycle. And the other thing is that once I got past the postdoc point and into a faculty job, I started to love astronomy again. Honestly, it's so much better to be faculty, for me at least, and to have the greater variety, the sort of more influence over people's lives and career paths, which for me is one of the most rewarding parts of being a faculty member, and the ability to influence an institution over the long term, to make changes at your institution that will stick, and to be able to follow through on them for long periods of time. So this is really kind of getting away from the original question, but it's related to the point, when did I know that I was going to be a faculty member? Well, I didn't until I got here, and I'm really glad that I was able to stick it out through the postdoc stage, and that I had the opportunity to enter the faculty stage and to see yeah, it gets so much better. This is like the it gets better project of astronomy postdocs. Astronomy postdocs are like a really terrible career stage, but it does get better.
I do want to say, though, that I enjoyed the actual postdoc work itself. Like, the actual stage of your life is not ideal, unless you like moving every 2 or 3 years and never knowing where. And yeah, if you like that lifestyle, then okay. But it's typically, it is a very suboptimal period of the academic life. But the actual postdoc job itself can be good. I mean, for instance, when I was at KICP at Chicago, I had a fellowship. I could do whatever I wanted. I had total freedom and no responsibilities. And so I could just work on whatever I wanted to. And I had a great faculty there that was filled with people whose research interests were aligned with mine. So if you end up at the right place with the right kind of postdoc, it can also be great. I also really enjoyed my first postdoc, which was at Caltech. Working with a scientist, Jason Rhodes. That's how I got first involved in the Joint Dark Energy Mission and in Euclid, and he was an amazing postdoc advisor. So depending on who you're working with, where you're working, and what the parameters of your postdoc are, the actual job itself can be great if you really love research. If you really love teaching, then it can be lacking because, yeah, you're usually just doing research.
I mean, I think one way to frame what you were just saying, both of you were saying, in the way that I've, over the past couple of years, have started looking at my job, is that I am absolutely 100% head over heels in love with science and the science that I do. I cannot imagine doing anything other than the studies that I get to do with my group and the instruments that I get to build and use. And I just love the science. Science is great. But the problem is that, the way I see it, is that science is embedded in this thing called academia. And the longer I've been in academia, I'm in my 16th year now of, since I started graduate school and leading up to now being a professor, is that I think that the whole system is fundamentally flawed. And it really desperately needs to change if we're going to optimize the science that we're trying to do. And I think that most of the difficulties that I've run into, especially as a person of color in this field in academia, which is generally not, it's very monochromatic, have been because of the shortcomings of the academic system. And so I think that's something that students, particularly students of color, should be aware of, is that I think we definitely need more diversity. But you should know that the system's not currently set up for it, and I think it needs to change. And that's one of the things that I'm really committed to as a professor, not that I have rank and position, is to try to institute fundamental changes to the way that we do business. Because until we do, we're not going to be doing the optimal science. And because I'm so in love with science, then I feel a deep commitment to making it as good as it can be. And so the postdoc horribleness is just one aspect of this multi-dimensional horribleness that often happens because it's embedded in this thing called academia.
Yeah, if I may add, I think research is certainly one of the great aspects of academia, but I will also say that academia is not the only place you can do research. If you look around, nearly every major corporation has their own research division, R&D. Granted, you won't probably be able to lead your own research program there, and your interest, at least not at the beginning, but it will be part of a great research team with interested development, like Google X, Microsoft Research, and Facebook Research, and others. So look at those directions, and the research skills again, as during PhD and during your first postdoc, such as critical thinking, ability to analyze and learn, will be very, very critical and helpful.
I'm very hesitant to end the conversation here, but just purely to be respectful of people's time. And it's actually, I mean, I don't want to end the conversation here, but maybe this is a good stopping point in the sense that we should have many, many more conversations. And there are a lot of people who are, this is a priority within our astronomy community. I'm so thankful that there are a lot of us who want to make within academia a better experience for our students in the next generation and for ourselves currently. And then also, because so many of us are going into industry, thinking about ways that we can influence what that experience will be for our astronomers in industry, and vice versa, what we can learn from what is working in industry and see what kind of changes we can make within academia. But again, only because we're running out of time. I think we'll end here. But I want to thank the Northwestern group for joining us and your wonderful questions. And I hope this has been a useful, helpful experience for you. And thank you very much to our panelists. We really appreciate you taking the time. My hope is that this is the first of several we can do like this, and representing different career choices, and just be as useful a resource as possible to our next wonderful generation. Thank you all.
Thanks.